The divisional round of the playoffs is upon us, and it is the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Houston Texans. And guys, this is a game that was played once before, just a few weeks ago, but I don't know that it will look anything at all like that game. We have a preview for the game here, and then we have a final prediction heading in to the divisional round of the playoffs. And the big ideas starting here, the number one is this. It is being reported that Joe Thuney will start at left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I say, why not? This worked well for the Kansas City Chiefs last time. Patrick Mahomes was sacked only once, and the Chiefs won. The offense looked good. This was their first game with Hollywood Brown back, and the offense looked as it never had this season. I think that game was a kicking off for the year that will be had in the playoffs, as it was the first time that we kind of saw the Chiefs come alive on both sides of the ball at the same time, and the offensive line working the way it did, in my opinion, greatly added to that, greatly added to the defense. Well, yes, because the offense was more able to control the ball, in my opinion, than they had all season long before that. So, putting Joe Thuney out there at left tackle makes a lot of sense rather than bringing back a guy who has been injured for a while and putting him onto the field when he has not looked up to snuff so far, especially against a team that has such a dynamic pass rush. The number two big idea here is just this. The Kansas City Chiefs are one win away. Should the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Houston Texans, they will be appearing in their seventh consecutive AFC Championship game. And it's very difficult to really take that into full consideration. In my lifetime, I had seen one playoff win prior to the Patrick Mahomes era. The previous win with Joe Montana, that was a little bit before my time really knowing what I was seeing, right? So I was not fully aware for that game. We had seen one playoff win prior to Patrick Mahomes, and here we are, should the Chiefs beat the Texans, being one game away from 7 consecutive AFC Championship games, a task that was exceeded only by the New England Patriots, which were, I think we can all kind of agree, the most ludicrous dynasty that has ever been in the NFL, and numbers back that up. One of the things that is so mind-blowing about this Chiefs run, about this Chiefs dynasty, about the career that Patrick Mahomes has had so far, had the Patriots not preceded this, the Kansas City Chiefs would be in the midst of the greatest run the NFL had ever seen. Were it not simply for that Patriots dynasty, Patrick Mahomes would already be the greatest quarterback of all time, basically, barring none. We all know that Patrick Mahomes is one win in the playoffs away from moving into second all-time. That second all-time, of course, is behind Tom Brady, and Tom Brady's playoff record is absolutely astronomical. It will take years if Patrick Mahomes is ever to approach the number of postseason wins had by Tom Brady, and that's because the most postseason games you can play in a single season is 4. Were it not for that one dynasty, Patrick Mahomes would be moving into tie for first all-time in postseason wins for a quarterback. Now, this Chiefs dynasty coming in so close in time to that Patriots dynasty makes it difficult to fully appreciate what the Chiefs are doing. The Patriots dynasty at this point still overshadows what the Chiefs are doing, but that's it in the entire history of the NFL. So just taking a moment before this game to recognize what is going on, or at least try to conceptualize and recognize the full extent of what we are seeing here, might be good for the fan base, myself included, because I do get lost in the sort of day-to-day of covering this team and failing to be able to recognize just the extraordinary nature of what this is. Now, what about when the Chiefs have the ball and the Chiefs run the ball? The Kansas City Chiefs were 22nd in the NFL with 105.3 rushing yards per game. That is on the uptick since Kareem Hunt has joined the Chiefs. The Texans were 11th in the NFL, allowing 114 yards per game. So, as far as the yardage totals are concerned, you can expect the Chiefs to be somewhere between 100 and 120 yards rushing in this game. Last time the Chiefs and the Texans played, however, it looked a little more like this. Kareem Hunt carried the ball 11 times for 55 yards. That's a 5-yard average. Patrick Mahomes ran the ball 5 times for 33 yards, which is a 6.6-yard average. And Isaiah Pacheco ran the ball 9 times for 26 yards. That is a 2.9-yard average. So this Texans team is good against the run. They were top third in the top 30 percentile, I guess, top third of the league, allowing those 114 yards per game. But Kareem Hunt really found a weak spot in that defense, and it was later in the game that this happened. If memory serves me correctly, and correct me if I am wrong, that game started with Isaiah Pacheco in the backfield, and things weren't going quite as strong for Isaiah Pacheco, as evidenced by that 2.9-yard average. Once Kareem Hunt started taking the bulk of the carries, things started going a little bit more downhill for the Kansas City Chiefs. That is the good side of having two backs that are a little bit opposite in your backfield. Some defenses are better set against a faster running back. Some defenses are better set against a thumper. The Chiefs have both. So if the Chiefs send one to your door and he can't get in, they're just going to send the next running back. And in the last time the Chiefs and the Texans played, that was Kareem Hunt. Now, the third item that I have here for when the Kansas City Chiefs run the ball is this. That Texans game, the first time around, in my opinion, really was a transformation of the offense into playoff mode, because we also saw Patrick Mahomes take off 5 times, gaining 33 yards. Did he have a rushing touchdown too, I believe? I believe Hunt and Mahomes both had rushing touchdowns. That game looked a lot like when the Chiefs got into the playoffs last year. Mahomes tucking the ball after a certain number of reads. This isn't there. Number 2 is not there. Number 3 is not there. Get yardage. That is what Mahomes does in the playoffs. That has worked well for the Chiefs in the playoffs. The last 2 Super Bowl runs were predicated on the fact that Patrick Mahomes all of a sudden starts running in the playoffs. We are going to see that in this game. That is the secret weapon for this offense. Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs coaching staff know that teams simply cannot account for Patrick Mahomes running the ball. Can't do it. You have to send all of your resources after him, or you have to put them into coverage. You cannot leave a spy on Patrick Mahomes, because that's just one more guy you're taking out of the defense. Well, if we're talking so much about Patrick Mahomes being a threat with the ball in his hands, what about when he is throwing? The Chiefs were 14th in the NFL with 222.4 yards per game, and the Texans were 6th in the NFL, allowing 201.0 yards per game. Patrick Mahomes overshot those numbers the last time these two teams played, going 28 for 41 for 260 yards and a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes, when he is willing to use his feet, is going to outperform versus defenses, because they have to stretch in order to account for that threat. The last time the Chiefs played the Texans, Xavier Worthy led the team with 7 receptions for 65 yards. Samaje Perine was second on the team with 3 catches for 50 yards, a 16.7-yard average. Then we had Hollywood Brown, 5 for 45, DeAndre Hopkins, 4 for 37, Travis Kelce, 5 for 30, and Kareem Hunt, 2 for 24, a 12-yard average. This was a transformation for this offense. Things were moving, things were clicking, and players were able to convert for first downs. That is a lot of what I think we're going to see in this game. Spreading the ball out is going to be paramount in this game, especially because the Texans do have a good defensive line. The Texans do have a couple of good corners. So Patrick Mahomes is going to be doing his best to identify matchups prior to the snap. He's going to make his reads, and then he's going to either fire the ball or take off. But spreading the ball around is going to make this offense look different than it has all season long. The last time the Texans also got a sack, just 1 sack on Patrick Mahomes, despite the fact that they averaged 2.88 sacks per game this past season. And the defense, the Texans defense, surrendered 5 more points than their average on the season. The Texans are coming off of an emotional high in beating the Chargers, and this team, the Texans, does play a little bit like a college team. When momentum is being had, they really capitalize, but it might be that the emotion has worn off from that win, and they're giving themselves too much credit, and that would be where the Chiefs could really hurt them. Talking about momentum, what about when the Texans run the ball? This was a true testament to their abilities as an offense last week. The Texans were 15th in the NFL with 112.3 yards per game. The Chiefs, defense was 8th in the NFL, allowing just 101.8 yards per game. The last time these two teams played, Joe Mixon went 14 for 47 with a 4.1-yard average, and that was quite fitting as he ran for 1,016 yards on the year with a 4.1-yard average. Should the Chiefs be able to hold him to his average output for the season, they will stand a good chance to win this game. And it was a respectable season indeed for Joe Mixon. But last week versus the Chargers, once the Texans had the lead and the end of the game was in sight, Joe Mixon proved to be an absolute battering ram that allowed them to shut the game down. The Chiefs should stop Mixon early and take a lead. That will be critical in grinding out a win versus the Houston Texans, and I do believe that it will be a grind to win this game. Everyone, I think, is kind of on the side that the Chiefs should be favored in this game. This game gives me pause. If someone is going to jump up and snipe the Kansas City Chiefs, it's going to be a team like the Texans. Someone that has a resilient offense, a mercurial quarterback, and an absolute cutthroat defense. Those are all of the things that the Texans can do on any given Sunday afternoon. We saw a massive upset last week with the Rams beating the Vikings. The Chiefs have to be on point in order to stop that from happening against them this week. I do not believe I am giving the Texans too much credit. I think this is the respect that team has earned this year. And you hear some people in the media talking about how this should be a win for the Chiefs, and they're not wrong. This should be a win for the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Texans get their say as well. Speaking of their say, what about when the Texans throw the ball? The Texans were 21st in the NFL With 207.4 yards per game, the Chiefs were 18th in allowing 218.8 yards per game. Again, two totals that are fairly comparable. The Chiefs were also 4th in the NFL, allowing just 19.2 points per game. That, in my opinion, factors greatly into this equation for the Chiefs defending the pass, because I think it is going to be C.J. Stroud's arm on which this game falls, for better or worse for either of these teams. The Chiefs, Stroud completed 59% of his passes in the first game, and he averages 63.2% on the season. This is a very interesting statistic when you take into account that the Chiefs also allowed just 4.1 yards per average or per carry to Joe Mixon, which was his exact season average. Should the Texans be held to their season averages, should no one be able to actually exceed their average normal run of the Sunday game, I think that advantages the Kansas City Chiefs greatly. Now, Stroud has had a much more difficult time here in his second season, and part of that has been that he is being sacked and it is throwing off his entire game. Should the Chiefs be able to get to Stroud and then get a lead, it could render Joe Mixon obsolete on the afternoon. This, in my opinion, comes down to Charles Omenihu and Chris Jones. Those two guys traveling along that defensive line have to cause disruption. I think, I've said it a couple times this week, Chris Jones staying on the inside for this game, pushing the pocket back into C.J. Stroud's face, and getting his hands up could make a very difficult afternoon for C.J. Stroud. The balancing act for the Kansas City Chiefs along the defensive line is that second defensive tackle position. Charles Omenihu is the second best defensive end on the team. You could argue that he is better than George Karlaftis. The temptation to put Charles Omenihu in the middle and use him against C.J. Stroud in the passing game, and his long arms, his great reach, he's very tall. Using all of those things against C.J. Stroud in the middle will be tempting. However, I think that Charles Omenihu is not as stout against the run in the middle as either Turk Wharton or Derek Noddy. And remember, the first thing I think the Chiefs want to be able to do in this game is shut down Joe Mixon. They do not want to allow him to get rolling for that offense. If they take away the run, which they've been very good at this year, take away the run, force C.J. Stroud to pass. C.J. Stroud pulled a couple ill-advised triggers last week against the Chargers, and it could have cost them dearly then. It did cost the Texans the first time the Texans and the Chiefs played. Forcing the offense to move away from Joe Mixon by stopping the run and scoring points, then you can start putting Charles Omenihu in the middle of that defense, causing the pocket to collapse and making things very, very difficult on C.J. Stroud. In my opinion, that is where this Chiefs defense could start to excel versus the Texans. The final prediction for this game, the Kansas City Chiefs win at 27-21. I think that it is a game that is going to be a nail-biter at halftime. I think it will be after halftime the Kansas City Chiefs start to pull away. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.